I grew up idolizing my little brother Jake. We shared everything in our suburban Boston home, from toys to secrets to dreams. My father Thomas always said blood was thicker than water, that family loyalty came first. I believed him completely. Until the day my father noticed his prized Rolex missing from his collection and Jake suggested looking in my room. I never imagined my own brother would plant that watch in my apartment, or that my family would choose to believe him over me. Even after the truth came out, they maintained their distance. But now everything has changed. Before I dive into how my own brother destroyed my life, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart. Family meant everything to me growing up. Our house in suburban Boston was always considered the perfect home on the block. My father Thomas built his accounting firm from nothing into a respected business with 30 employees. He drove a Mercedes, wore tailored suits, and expected nothing less than excellence from his sons. My mother Diana, always elegant and composed, managed our social calendar and made sure our family presented the perfect image to the community. I was the firstborn, the one who carried my father on my shoulders. Jake came 2 years later. From the beginning, there was always a subtle competition between us, though I never saw it that way at first. I thought we were just brothers pushing each other to be better. When I made honor roll, Jake would study harder. When Jake won a baseball tournament, I would practice my swing until my hands blistered. Our father encouraged this. He would say, "A healthy competition builds character," but there was always an undercurrent to his words. Success and appearances mattered above all else in the Williams family. Every Sunday we had family dinner where my father would ask about our achievements for the week. Good grades, sports victories, and community recognition were praised. Failures and mistakes were discussed as learning opportunities, but the disappointment in his eyes was unmistakable. My mother would quietly serve seconds of her pot roast, occasionally squeezing my shoulder when I fell short of expectations. By the time I reached high school, I had internalized the pressure. I was captain of the debate team, maintained a perfect GPA, and secured early admission to Boston University. Jake struggled more. His grades were average. He quit the baseball team junior year, and he seemed to drift between friend groups. I could see the pain in his eyes when our father would toast to my accomplishments while barely acknowledging his presence. I tried to help him, stayed up late explaining calculus problems, edited his essays, even introduced him to my friends. But something had shifted in our relationship. His smile never quite reached his eyes anymore, and sometimes I would catch him staring at me with an expression I could not name. In college, I double majored in finance and economics, landing internships that impressed even my father. Meanwhile, Jake barely made it into a state school and switched majors 3 times. When I graduated with honors, my father handed me a gold pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather. The pride in his eyes that day made all the late nights studying worth it. That summer, I joined my father at his firm as a junior accountant. I worked twice as hard as anyone else, determined to prove I earned my position through merit, not nepotism. Jake, who had dropped out after sophomore year, moved back home and took odd jobs that never seemed to last. The day I received my first promotion, my father gifted me an expensive Rolex. I noticed the tension in Jake when I showed it off at dinner. He excused himself early that night. Looking back, I should have seen the signs. The whispered phone calls he would quickly end when I entered the room. The new clothes and electronic gadgets that appeared despite his lack of steady income. The way he would redirect conversations whenever money was mentioned. I was so caught up in my own success that I missed my brother spiraling into trouble. He started hanging around with people our parents would never approve of. Guys with flashy cars who never seemed to work regular hours. He began coming home at odd hours, sometimes not at all, for days. During one family dinner, I confronted him about his new friends. Our father joined in, questioning where Jake was getting money for his new lifestyle. Jake exploded, accusing us of always judging him, of never believing he could make something of himself on his own terms. I can still see how red his face got, how his hands trembled as he pointed at me. "You think you are so perfect, Stefan. Everyone thinks you are so perfect. But I know better." The words hung in the air like a threat. My mother quickly changed the subject, offering dessert and complimenting my recent work project. But something had broken open that night, something that could never be repaired. 2 weeks later, my life as I knew it ended forever. It was a Tuesday evening when my father called an emergency family meeting. His face was granite. As we gathered in his study, the walls lined with books he had never read but kept for appearance. My mother sat perched on the edge of the leather sofa, hands clasped tightly in her lap. $10,000 in cash is missing from my safe, my father announced without preamble, along with the vintage Patek Philippe watch and your grandmother Diana jewelry. The air in the room thickened. Jake sat across from me, his expression a mask of concern. Did someone break in? I asked. My father shook his head slowly. The safe was not forced. Someone knew the combination. I felt the first stirring of unease. Only family members knew that combination. My father had shared it with me when I turned 21, a symbol of trust and inclusion in adult family matters. I knew Jake had it as well. We need to call the police, I said. Not yet, my father replied. I want to handle this internally first. Looking back, I should have insisted on involving authorities immediately. Professional investigators might have approached the situation without the emotional baggage that clouded my family judgments. Jake leaned forward, brow furrowed in performed concentration. You know, he said slowly, Stefan has been spending a lot of money lately on that new girlfriend of his, the one from the marketing department. I stared at him in disbelief. What are you talking about? I had been dating Melissa for 3 months. We went Dutch on most dates, and the few gifts I had bought her were well within my budget. That designer purse you got her last week must have cost at least $2,000. Jake continued his voice, a perfect blend of reluctance and concern. It was a replica, I said, feeling the need to defend myself despite knowing I had done nothing wrong. And it was her birthday. My father was watching me now, his eyes narrowing. You seem defensive, Stefan. Because I am being accused of something ridiculous, I shot back, feeling heat rise to my face. Nobody is accusing you of anything, my mother interjected, but her eyes would not meet mine. The next evening, my father called me at my apartment. His voice was cold, controlled. We found something, Stefan. I need you to come to the house immediately. When I arrived, they were all sitting in the living room. On the coffee table lay a pawn shop receipt, with my signature forged on it. Next to it was a printout of bank deposits to my secondary account, the one I had opened for my eventual home down payment. Where did you get these? I asked, picking up the receipt. This is not my signature. It was in your car, Stefan, Jake said softly, in the glove compartment. I borrowed your car yesterday to pick up some groceries for Mom and found it. I turned to him, suddenly understanding with perfect clarity. You did this. You set me up. His face registered shock, so convincing that for a second I doubted myself. Why would I do that? Because you have always been jealous of me, I said, the pieces falling into place. The missing items, the forged receipt, the mysterious deposits. You took the stuff and framed me. My father stood, his face flushed with anger. Enough. The evidence is clear. The receipt has your signature. The money is in your account. Stop making accusations to cover your tracks. I did not take anything, I shouted, desperation rising. Dad, you have to believe me. Check the security cameras at the pawn shop. They will show who actually sold the items. A silence fell over the room. Then my father spoke, his voice quiet and final. I already did. The manager described someone matching your description exactly. Later I would learn that Jake had worn my jacket, styled his hair like mine, and possibly even shown my ID. We looked similar enough from a distance that an overworked pawn shop manager might not notice the difference. Stefan, my father said, his voice strangled with emotion. I gave you everything. A position at my company, my trust. And this is how you repay me. Dad, please. I began, but he held up a hand. I want you out of this house. I want you out of the company. I want you out of this family. The words hit like physical blows. My mother gave a small sob but said nothing in my defense. Jake looked down at his hands, the perfect picture of a heartbroken brother. I am giving you 1 hour to pack whatever belongs to you, my father continued. Your key card for the office has already been deactivated. Your final paycheck will be mailed to you. This cannot be happening, I thought, as I stumbled up to my childhood bedroom. My hands shook so badly, I could barely fold clothes into a suitcase. Downstairs, I could hear my mother crying and my father low, comforting voice. Not for me, but for their pain at my supposed betrayal. As I carried my suitcase down, Jake stood at the bottom of the stairs. For a moment, his mask slipped, and I saw something in his eyes. Not remorse, but satisfaction. Victory. You will not get away with this, I told him quietly. He leaned close, voice barely a whisper. I already have. They believe me. They will always believe me over you now. My mother could not look at me as I said goodbye. My father stood by the door, his face a stone wall. For the last time, he said, if you confess now and return what is left of the money, we might find a path to forgiveness. I cannot confess to something I did not do, I replied. He nodded once, as if I had confirmed everything he believed. Then do not contact us again. The door closed behind me with a terrible finality. I sat in my car for nearly an hour, too shocked to drive, watching the windows of the house that was no longer my home. In one upstairs window, I saw Jake's silhouette. He was moving things into my old room. The weeks that followed exist in my memory as a blur of desperation and disbelief. I called in sick to my other part-time accounting job for 3 days, unable to function through the fog of betrayal. When I finally returned, my performance suffered so badly that my supervisor pulled me aside after 2 weeks to ask if everything was okay. I could not tell her the truth. How do you explain to someone that your entire family has disowned you based on a lie? That your own brother framed you for theft? That your parents who raised you for 25 years could discard you so easily? Instead, I said I was going through a rough patch and promised to do better. I threw myself into work during the day, while my nights were consumed with trying to unravel what Jake had done. I had to move out of my comfortable apartment into a dingy studio in a rundown part of town. My savings were meager, and without my job at my father firm, I struggled to cover even basic expenses. I sold my car, canceled all subscriptions, and lived on ramen and canned soup. The worst part was the silence. I called my parents every day for the first week. My messages went straight to voicemail. Emails returned, undelivered. I even wrote physical letters that came back marked, "Return to sender." I tried reaching out to extended family, only to learn that my father had told everyone I had stolen from them, and was not to be trusted. I was completely alone, cut off from everyone who had ever meant anything to me. The turning point came one evening when I was carrying my laundry back to my apartment. My neighbor David, a quiet guy who worked in computer security, helped me pick up a dropped sock. Somehow we ended up talking, and over a shared pizza, I told him my story. Instead of the skepticism I had grown to expect, David believed me. That simple act of faith from a virtual stranger gave me the first glimmer of hope I had felt in months. You need evidence, he said pragmatically. Proof that your brother set you up. With David's help, I began a methodical investigation. We started with the pawn shop located 3 miles from my parents' house. After several visits and a small bribe to a talkative employee, we gained access to their security footage from the day in question. There it was, Jake wearing my jacket and baseball cap, selling my father watch and my mother jewelry. His face was partially obscured, but I could see enough. I recognized his walk, the way he gestured with his left hand when counting money. Next, David helped me trace the mysterious deposits to my account. They had come through a series of digital transfers designed to be difficult to track, but not impossible. The original source was an online gambling site where Jake had apparently won big, only to lose it all again days later. He had moved some of his winnings through my account to make it look like I had cash from selling the stolen items. While gathering evidence, I somehow managed to keep my job and even started rebuilding a life. I met Anna, a kind-hearted co-worker, who saw past my emotional walls. She became first a friend, then more offering support without pressure. 6 months after being cast out, I had compiled a comprehensive file of evidence proving my innocence. Security footage, bank records, statements from the pawn shop employees. even a recording of a phone call to the gambling site confirming Jake account activity. I was ready to clear my name. The confrontation happened on a Sunday, the day that had once been reserved for family dinners. I arrived at my parents' house, unannounced evidence folder in hand. Jake Carr was not in the driveway, a small mercy. My mother answered the door, gasping when she saw me. "Stefan," she whispered, her hand flying to her throat. "You should not be here. I need 10 minutes. I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I have proof that Jake framed me." Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, hope. But she shook her head. "Your father will not want to see this." "He needs to see it," I insisted, stepping forward. "Mom, please. 10 minutes. She hesitated, then stepped aside. My father was in his study just as I had expected. When he saw me, he stood abruptly, face darkening with anger. Before he could speak, I placed the folder on his desk. "I know what you think of me," I said. "But before you throw me out again, just look at these." Reluctantly, he opened the folder. I watched his face as he flipped through the pages, saw the security footage stills of Jake selling the stolen items, read the bank records, showing the money trail. His expression changed from dismissal to confusion to a terrible understanding. My mother peered over his shoulder, her hand covering her mouth, as she saw the evidence of Jake's deception. When the front door opened and closed, we all froze. Jake walked into the study, stopping short when he saw me. "What is he doing here?" he demanded. My father held up the folder. "Is this true? Did you steal from us and frame your brother?" Jake's face went through a series of expressions from shock to denial to calculation. Finally, seeing the evidence arrayed before him, his shoulders slumped. "I had some gambling debts," he admitted. "People were threatening me. I needed money fast. I was going to pay it all back, I swear." "So, you stole from us, and let us believe Stefan was the thief," my father said, his voice hollow. Jake's eyes welled with practiced tears. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake. I was desperate. I did not know what else to do. Stefan always had everything so easy. The job at your firm, your approval, everything." I stared at him in disbelief. Easy I had worked for every achievement, every bit of recognition. My father sat heavily in his chair. "I need time to process this," he said. I turned to him expectantly, waiting for the apology, the acknowledgement of the terrible injustice they had inflicted on me. Instead, he looked at me with tired eyes. "You should have tried harder to make us believe you," he said. "You should have fought harder to prove your innocence." The words struck me like a physical blow. "You should have trusted me," I replied. "I am your son. You raised me for 25 years. How could you believe I would steal from you?" My mother stepped forward, touching my arm tentatively. "We made a mistake, Stefan. But you have to understand how convincing it all looked." And now I asked, "Now that you know the truth?" A heavy silence fell over the room. Then my father spoke. "This situation has torn this family apart. We need time to heal, all of us." I looked from him to my mother to Jake, who was now openly crying, playing the role of the remorseful brother to perfection. In that moment, I understood a fundamental truth: they would forgive Jake. They already had. But they would not apologize to me, not really. In their minds, I had still done something wrong by disrupting the family, by forcing them to confront an uncomfortable truth. "So that is it?" I asked. "No apology, no consequences for Jake. He is getting help for his gambling problem," my father said. "He is seeing a therapist." And me, I persisted. "What about me?" My father sighed. "Stefan, this has been difficult for everyone. Perhaps with time I did not let him finish. With time I would come to understand that my place in this family had always been conditional. I had been loved for what I achieved, for how I made them look, not for who I was. I do not need time," I said, gathering the evidence back into the folder. "I needed parents who believed in me. I needed a brother who did not betray me. But I see now that I never truly had either." I walked out of that house for the second time, but this time I was not broken. I was free. The years that followed were challenging, but ultimately fulfilling. I built my career at a different accounting firm, eventually becoming a senior manager. David remained a loyal friend, and Anna and I dated for 2 years before amicably parting ways. I met Sarah at a professional conference. She was brilliant, kind, and saw me completely. We married in a small ceremony attended by my new friends, the family I had chosen rather than the one I was born into. Occasionally, I would hear updates about my biological family through distant relatives. Jake had supposedly gotten his gambling under control. My father's business continued to thrive. They never reached out directly. I had almost made peace with the permanent estrangement when, 3 years after the confrontation, I received a call that would change everything again. My phone rang on a Tuesday evening as Sarah and I were preparing dinner. The number was unfamiliar, but something made me answer. "Stefan." It was my Aunt Carol, my mother's sister. "Is that you?" "Yes," I replied cautiously. We had not spoken since the estrangement. Her voice was tight with emotion. "Your father had a heart attack this morning. He is in the hospital. It is serious." The news hit me with unexpected force. Despite everything, he was still my father. "Is he going to be okay?" "The doctors are not sure yet. He is stable, but critical." She paused. "I think you should come, Stefan. Whatever happened between you, all this is bigger." After hanging up, I stood frozen in my kitchen. Sarah touched my arm gently. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I do not know if I can face them again," I admitted. "Not after everything." Sarah, who knew my full story, considered her words carefully. "You do not owe them anything, Stefan. But maybe you owe it to yourself to go. Not for them, but for your own closure." That night I barely slept, weighing my options. By morning I had made my decision. I would go to the hospital not seeking reconciliation, but to make peace with my own past. The hospital corridor seemed endless as I walked toward the cardiac care unit. Outside my father's room I paused, gathering my courage. Through the small window in the door, I could see my mother sitting by the bed, holding my father's hand. Jake was standing by the window, staring out. I knocked softly and entered. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me in shock. "Stefan," my mother whispered, rising from her chair. Jake's face darkened. "What are you doing here?" Aunt Carol called me. I explained, my eyes on my father. He looked smaller, somehow vulnerable in the hospital bed, attached to monitors and IV lines. The once powerful man who had cast me out was now frail and pale. My father's eyes widened at the sight of me. His lips moved, forming my name, though no sound came out. My mother stepped toward me, then stopped, uncertainty in every line of her body. After a moment, she rushed forward, embracing me briefly before pulling back. "You came," she said, tears in her eyes. Jake remained by the window, arms crossed defensively. "You did not need to come," he said. "We have everything under control." I ignored him, approaching my father's bed. "The doctor says you had quite a scare," I said awkwardly. My father nodded weakly. He reached for my hand, surprising me. His fingers felt cool and papery against mine. "I am glad you are here," he managed to say. The simple statement contained none of the apology or acknowledgement I had once craved, yet something in his eyes spoke of regret. Whether it was regret for his actions or merely regret for the lost years, I could not tell. We talked briefly about his condition, the prognosis, the changes to his diet and lifestyle that would be necessary. Normal things, as if the massive rift between us did not exist. Perhaps that was the only way any of us knew how to proceed. After 30 minutes, a nurse came to check my father's vitals and suggested he rest. I took the opportunity to leave, promising vaguely to return the next day. My mother walked me to the elevator. As the doors were closing, she put her hand out to stop them. "We have Sunday dinner still," she said hesitantly. "Every week. If you wanted to come this weekend, I am making pot roast. Your favorite." I did not immediately answer, caught between old yearning and hard-won self-protection. "I will think about it," I finally said. The elevator doors closed on her hopeful expression. True to my word, I thought about it for days. Sarah and I discussed it at length, weighing the potential for healing against the risk of further pain. "You have built a good life without them," she reminded me. "You do not need to let them back in if you are not ready." "I do not think I will ever be completely ready," I admitted. "But maybe this is not about being ready. Maybe it is about being brave enough to face the past without letting it control me. That Sunday, I arrived at my childhood home carrying a bottle of wine and boundaries as firm as steel. My mother answered the door with a tremulous smile. My father, home from the hospital, but moving slowly, nodded from his armchair. Jake stood awkwardly in the kitchen doorway, neither welcoming nor openly hostile. Dinner was a strange affair. We talked about safe topics: my job, my father, recovery, my mother, garden. No one mentioned the years of estrangement or the reasons behind it. It was only as we finished dessert that my father cleared his throat. "I owe you an apology, Stefan." He said the words clearly difficult for him. "I should have trusted you. I should have given you the benefit of the doubt." It was not the comprehensive acknowledgement of wrong I might have once needed, but I recognized the effort it took for a proud man like my father to admit even this much fault. "Thank you," I said simply. Jake stared at his plate, saying nothing. He had not apologized, and I doubted he ever would. Some wounds would never fully heal. As I prepared to leave, my mother pressed a container of leftovers into my hands, a painfully normal gesture that nearly broke my composure. "Will you come again next week?" she asked. I considered her question carefully. "I am not sure what this is yet," I said honestly. "I am not sure if we can rebuild or what that would even look like, but I am willing to try slowly with boundaries." She nodded, understanding, at least part of what I was saying. "We miss you," she admitted. "I miss who I thought you were," I thought, but did not say. Instead, I promised to call later in the week. Driving home, I felt a curious lightness. Not the euphoria of reconciliation, but the freedom of choice. I was choosing to explore the possibility of a new relationship with my family, one built on my terms, not theirs. One where my worth was not tied to their approval. In the months that followed, I maintained cautious contact. Sunday dinners became a monthly occurrence. My father and I had careful conversations about his business, about my career. My mother sent birthday cards and occasional texts. Jake and I established a cool civility that would likely never warm to true brotherhood again. Sarah and I bought our first house, a comfortable 3-bedroom in a good school district. When we discovered she was pregnant, I felt both joy and trepidation. Parenthood would bring me full circle, forcing me to examine the lessons of my own upbringing. I promised my unborn child that night, whispering to Sarah, still flat stomach, that they would always be loved unconditionally, that they would be valued for who they were, not what they achieved, that I would always, always believe in them. The journey from betrayal to healing taught me that family is not just about blood. It is about choice, about trust, about seeing each other truly and loving anyway. Sometimes the family we build matters more than the one we are born into. If you have ever had to rebuild after betrayal, let me know in the comments below. How did you find the strength to move forward? Like this video if my story resonated with you. Subscribe for more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth is never defined by those who fail to see it.